Good evening to everyone.
Good evening, Rodney. Audio mic check. Working okay?
I had turned up volume, but you can hear you.
Okay, I'll see if I can make my end louder. Check, check.
You're coming in loud and clear.
Thanks.
So, how's everybody doing?
Well, seeing as how there's looks like only three of us, I'm doing well.
Okay. Looks like we got a fourth.
Good.
Steve, how are you?
I'm great. I'm finally taking the plunge and going to this version 3 and I haven't actually gotten it to work yet, but I tried the stupid approach of simply uh, taking what I already had, working in the previous version, and just trying to load it in 3. And then can tell there's some things I need to do. But anyway, we can talk about that once we get started. But I've when I last visited you, think or saw you, I was helping. I got a chance to dispatch on uh, Parker's excellent layout that you did all the dispatcher on, and I enjoyed doing that so much that I finally decided to upgrade.
Okay, good. Well, let's start in with what you got then, Steve.
Okay, I hate to monopolize, but then again, since I'm the only one speaking right now, I'll do it until somebody shuts me up. And thank you, Rodney. First of all, thank you for creating this wonderful software that we all use and that doesn't even cost us anything. And we're very grateful. I'm very grateful to you for that. Um, I've watched all of the herding cats videos, and there's probably some little thing that I'm missing. And I also post on the cats users group that challenge that I'm having right now is version 3 with my version 5.4 of JMRI doesn't seem to want to load in cats. I can load it in designer and it all looks good and everything in designer, but in cats I get that dreaded black screen where there's nothing displayed.
Yeah. I can, since you said version 5.4 of Jamari, um, that triggered something. And the likely thing I would look at is that in JMRI between 5.3 and 5.4, they removed the log4j library.
Oh,
And it was log4j like 1.17 or something like that, and no longer
really?
exists. CATS expects that library for doing logging. And
Wow.
there are a couple of ways around it. Um, One would be to take the log4j library out of the cat's zip file that you got off of the website and just
Yes.
put it in your JMRI program files. I'm sorry, in your program files JMRI lib directory folder, and
Okay.
that could solve it. Problem is that library has a apparently has a history of some security holes in it. And that's something I'm working on is getting rid of that.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, can I interrupt? I do
sure.
show that I have a file called in there called log4j 1.2.17.jar, but it's from 12. Yeah, and it was loaded on 12/1 of 2024. Is that the file I need, Rodney?
That should work. Um, but if in doubt, like I say, take the log, check what's in. I'd have to look what's in the.
That's fine. I can check it. Yes, sir. I'll go
Yeah.
check it right now. I don't mean to make
Oh,
you do
I
all
can
the
do the
work.
same. I've got right here. Um, that's one possibility, and that's typically the biggest problem is because JMRI quit shipping with a Log4j version one, and they've got
Yeah, this one
Log4j.
looks like it's the right one. It's called Log4j. Let me compare the two. I can open them in two different windows. Um, Make sure if it was something that simple, that would be wonderful. But let me try and open a second file explorer and see if the names are different. So I've got the one that I have under JMRI is where am I? Oh, look inside the program files. Yes, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
so
program
under
files lib.
lib and log four. Okay, I'm gonna look for the same. I'm gonna match the names up, and I can just copy them over too, just to make sure, which is not a problem. But let me. I'm just wanting to learn here. So
Yeah,
log
if you've
four j.
got 1.2.17, that should work.
I do have that, so my problem must be something else. I did post the output of the messages file. Um, I I'm gonna skip talking about that for now because I know that this isn't a call you're having just to help one person get his install going. But couple of questions I saw on the new features of Cats 3 on the herding cats video. They talked about being able to put these buttons on the screen and assigning purposes to them. But when I look at the designer manual, I couldn't find that mentioned in there.
Okay.
So, I mean, is there a, let's see, I guess I'll go into designer and, my question will be just how do I add those? So, like I say, designer works. So that isn't my problem. And I can work on the other thing here a little later. Let me open up this file and it is, let's see here, JMRI. And there we go. So, opening that. And like I said, when I open the in Designer, I don't have any trouble. It opens up just fine and shows me the right things. Uh, so if I go to where do I go to add a button? Is it under details or oh, there it is, details button. Okay, snake it would have bit me. Well, that was
Okay.
one. Yes, sir. Hi.
So yeah,
That
give
was
that a try, and if it's
yeah.
not clear enough, let me know.
All right, I'm gonna just try it. I see. So there's the username and okay, I'm pretty sure I can figure that out. So sorry, I don't know why I missed it. The other question, and I've had this even with the old version, is in Designer, there's a chance to load an include file. And I was loading one. It consisted of all of the tables, sensor tables, and turnout and all the tables from JMRI. And is that just something that designer uses in order to uh, reference JMRI since you don't run JMRI while you're using designer? Or does that file also get loaded when you load the actual CATS program to run
It,
it?
yeah, it gets loaded only when you load the actual CATS program. Designer doesn't need it at all. It's
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's just a little bit of a shortcut for you so that it saves you a couple steps when you fire up JMRI and CATS.
Okay. And since I'm doing this as an experimental version right now, because I'm still running my layout with the older version until I get it working on my desktop here in my home office, um, I it's having trouble finding some of the trying to try having trouble finding the file I'm specifying. I went ahead and put it in the same folder as JMRI is running from. But I can play with all of that later. I think that might be what my problem is just not finding um, some files. So should I generally expect to be able to take my version, my working version 2 file and you run it under 3 and it should work?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll keep working on why it's not. Again, I don't want to tie up the whole call. I'm not exactly sure. Let me try it one last time while I got you on the phone, just in case. Um, Go into cats.bat and open it, and it tries to run. I say file, open, and opening the XML, and now I get this error, file not found while opening, and then I list the name of the file I'm trying to. Oh, it's trying to find. So that's where I seem to be having trouble. It's trying to find stuff that I'm storing on my Dropbox, which is how I've always run JMRI so that I can work on it from any computer. I'm willing to put it locally instead. I know that that's the file it's not finding because it lists it C colon users, Steve, Dropbox, documents, GMRI, KCS3, LocalNet tables, blah, blah, it lists that. So my bigger question is number one, how can I remove the included file or change it to open one up locally?
Yeah. In Designer, you do the include. If I remember right, it probably it doesn't actually. I don't think it prints out what's in there. So I
No. Yeah.
think save it with a blank name.
Save. I'm so sorry. Save
Yeah.
what with a.
Okay. In Designer, let's see, I got to figure out where the include is.
I know where it is. It's under um, appearance
Mm-hmm.
and then include files. When I click on it, it doesn't show me anything. But I guess you're saying if I pick a different one,
Yes.
okay, I'll see if that does the trick. That's good. What if I wanted to not do it at all? Because by just choosing nothing, it doesn't seem to change anything.
Do an accept without changing anything. In other words, it's blank. Then just do an accept
Okay.
with the
Well, there's
field
no
being blank.
except. There's just the word open. So I'll do it, open, but it doesn't do anything. The
Oh,
screen doesn't go away.
that doesn't. Okay.
So when I go to appearance, include file, it doesn't tell me what may or may
Right.
not be included, but I can add one.
Right.
Let me try adding the one that's local and see if that also solves the problem.
Yeah. That's weird that it can't get through.
It doesn't want to find stuff on my Dropbox for some reason, which is weird because that's how I've always run it in the old version. But again, that could be something on my computer. I want to stick with issues related to your software. I don't expect you to come here and troubleshoot my personal
Mhm.
computer. So let's see if that caused it to not have that file not found error. So here we go. And what is the purpose of the include file since it runs JMRI anyway and it has all those tables? I'm just curious more than anything else.
Yeah. The reason is because those tables don't automatically get loaded into JMRI. Um,
Oh,
in other words, if you want to load them, you've got to go to the JMRI. Um,
yeah, I understand. And say
yeah,
load. Okay, so I'm still getting the same error, and even though I changed the file name, it seems to be trying to find the one in on my Dropbox. It didn't seem like it corrected anything, but let me try and load it. I said okay to that error message, and looking at the dispatcher panel, it doesn't seem like open. Yeah, it just gives me that error message, and when I click OK, there's nothing on the screen.
I see Ken Cameron's got his hand up. Maybe he's got an answer.
Cameron, you're one of the smartest guys I know.
Well, I
Are you
actually,
on mic? Yeah.
I'll tell you what I was popping up because, like, I kind of came in just a little bit late, but one of the things I just wanted to confirm with Rodney, designer looking at the file with the tables from JMRI, I thought it used that to validate all of the usernames rather than system names that you could use in designer uh, to take advantage of that type of later adjustment period where you go into JMRI and you might change what a username is actually tied to because, oh, we had to move this or change it to a different board, things like that.
Nope, doesn't do any verification. All it does is when you pick a file, it just takes that string and puts it into an XML element. And then CATS picks up that element and does an open on it when it loads. So no verification.
Okay. All right. So it's still a matter of when you're entering names in designer, don't make a mistake.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be the rule. And I've got it working. So I'm generally confident that I didn't make too many mistakes. Let me exit this CATS and try and change the include file again. So I'm entering designer. I'm going to file, open. If you want me to be sharing my screen, I could. It's
I
Zoom.
don't think there's any way to do it. I don't think that Eric has figured out how he
Okay.
can, how he can turn on screen sharing and
I don't worry about it. So now I'm going to load. I'm just going to do it myself and describe it. So now I'm going to, sorry, load this XML file, and it loads, like I say, in Designer just fine. So now I'm going to go to Appearance, Include File, and there's no way to know if one has or hasn't been included. And I'm going to include this local version that is stored on my own resident hard drive, and I'm going to hit File, Save, and now I'm going to hit File, Exit. And also, this has always happened, and maybe one of the others knows the answer to this. Even though I saved it, then always asks me, save on exit, save existing layout. Should I say yes to that, or is that saving something different than what I think it is?
okay. First of all, it's not always, but it's most of the time. And I kind of chuckle because um, everything that you can do in Designer has a flag on it that says if it's been saved or not. And
Oh,
so whenever you save it, then that flag, they, okay, I should say it has a not saved flag.
yeah, I
And
understand. Okay, that
and
makes
when
sense.
you save it, then the not flag saved flag gets cleared. And there's something in there, and I haven't figured out, I haven't chased it through because there's so many things that flag is not being being set when it's not supposed to be. So you can, if you have done a save and it says you need to save it for, do you want to save before you exit? You can ignore it. The second save.
Okay.
And
Um,
in fact, you probably want to because every time you do a save, it backs up your current XML file and overwrites it with the new one. So you've got a one step backup. So if you save and save again, then you basically got two copies of the same thing and you lost your backup.
Oh, that explains it. Well, that's good to know. Well, I did save and save again because out of an abundance of caution, and that did work in terms of now it is looking locally. And now it's not having a problem finding the file, but it says error while parsing, exception, and then the error on line 2. Cannot find the declaration of element, single quote, document on single quotes, and then it says C HTTP JMI org package JMI configure error handler .shtml for more information. So let me click OK on that and see if anything comes up on my screen. But no, nothing loaded, I guess. I can look at the log file, but again,
Well,
I don't want to bother people too much if there's other people who want to talk about something else. I didn't mean to join this call and just sort of take over.
oh,
I
no,
will.
no, no problem.
tell you I have messages.log and it's extremely lengthy. I guess they always
Mhm.
are. Trying to figure out what the uh,
Okay, let me ask, what file did you include? So this should be the one from JMRI.
yes. The
'Cause-
name of my file is called LocoNet tables, and it's simply all of my defined
Mhm.
turnouts and names and block names and everything from the version that does run, that does work. And I just copied that file to put it locally on this other computer, which is running the newer Java 11. I didn't go to 17 because it seemed to indicate I should use 11. If that's wrong, I can try going to 17.
Um, I don't think it makes any difference. Ken may
No,
have a more update, but 11 and 17 both 11 should work. That's what I've been running. Well,
I'm
actually,
running
no, I moved,
11.
but I did 11 for a while, but then I had to go to 17 because Eclipse didn't like 11.
Oh, I'm using the Azul version, but um, I can try and switch to
No, I'm
sim.
not. I don't think your Java version's doing it. Um, it sounds like the error you read off sounds like JMRI could not parse your tables file.
Right, which makes sense, except that the old version could. But only, let me be very clear, maybe I need to redo something because all information just that was a tables file created in JMRI version 2. No, wait a minute. What is it? Let me get it right here. 4.14, which is what I'd been using. So the first thing I did was upgraded my JMRI to 4. Sorry, to 5.4 because that was what you showed as being the latest version that worked with your tested version of CATS. So first, is that correct? I should be running 5.4 of JMRI to run CATS version 3.0
No,
final.
okay. Okay. Um, for a couple things. First of all, what version, the answer to your question, what version of JMRI matches CATS 3? And CATS 3 is good back to everything, and I think JMRI 4.24. I
Okay.
think
It does say that on your site. I
yep,
think it does. So, um, okay. So I'm making notes here. So,
sure.
writing this down as you speak. But okay. So go ahead. So to be
Okay.
clear, yeah,
So that's one point. The second point is that particularly if you're running a Digitrack system, you
I
can't
am.
go from 414 to JMRI 5.4. You've got to take an intermediate step in there to do an upgrade.
Oh,
And it's on the JMRI website. I think you got to go to JMRI 5.0 and check. You really need to check the website and see what the upgrade path is.
I will do that. I've read a lot of these. Like I'm on 14 and it says first go to 20 before it. So I could do all those, but I guess the reason I didn't know that I had to, but I will.
Yeah,
That's what you
and
tell me.
it's
Don't.
not just, I think it's not just a matter of upgrading. I think you need to launch JMRI because
Mhm.
JMRI will get in and it'll change your profile and your tables and that kind of
Oh,
stuff. So
There's,
don't
okay.
there's
just do
Ken
the
Cameron.
upgrade.
You might, Ken Cameron probably's got the answer.
Ken?
Okay, here's the story. The various upgrade points in between, what you need to do is stop at those. Do a save of the preferences and a load and then save of your panel file. The reason
Oh,
is it said somewhere along the line at those particular step points, we changed some of the file presentations, some of the coding in it. And
oh.
for a couple of versions after, it still reads the old version, but you get too many versions ahead, it no longer knows how to read that old of a file format. Uh,
Oh, even though, Ken, and I know you're the expert, I'm not disputing, I'm trying to learn. Even though I can open JMRI and do see in the tables the turnouts and such that I would expect to see.
but it may be that you're going to get some errors because some element in the XML is either too old or too new. That's also why
Got
going
it.
backwards doesn't work.
I
The
see.
newer versions write something using today's version of the XML, and the old
Wow.
versions have no clue what some of those mean.
I'll bet you
And
that's the
also,
problem.
we clean up sometimes after quite a few major revisions that, yeah, we're not going to still have this code that was trying to recognize and figure out like a 3.0 version.
That makes perfect sense, Ken. And I thought it only applied to scripting, and I just assumed I'd have to start all my scripts over. I didn't know even the tables could be affected. So I am virtually certain that's where my issue is. I got another, and this one would be a JMRI question than a CATS question. And I'll shut up and again let some other people talk, because that's what I'm going to start doing. That's what I got to do. Just go back, revert to what I had that worked, and then I can just upgrade it from 14, I think, straight to 24, but I'll double check. I do have the path. I will do it as instructed because you guys have a great site and it's very clear. And I will upgrade to the lowest one that should work with cats and see if that doesn't just cure my ills. But that leads me to a question. The concept of signal aspects as opposed to sending turnout codes. What version of JMRI do I have to be able to utilize that?
That's using a few phrases that have a lot of differences depending on what the
Oh,
underlying hardware is.
I see.
For instance, one of the things that cats finally learned was how, yeah, you might be using hardware like LCC that it's doing a certain amount of the logic itself,
I
and
see.
that cats has to be a bit more hands off and can't change everything as it wants. But
Oh,
the other part is with the concept of aspects, they've been around a long time, but those two have gone through a few changes too.
okay, Ken. And then specifically in my case, I've always used the uh, Digitrax SE8Cs, and that's all sends a bunch of turnout commands. And I'm switching over to the new SE74s where you can opt to send turnout commands or send direct signal aspect commands under what they call the DCC signal decoder, I think it's called, or something. So, in other words, it doesn't send turnout messages at all. It sends a device address and then a code as to which aspect you want of, I think it's 6 possible, maybe it's 9 possible aspects. Is that making any sense? So, when did that feature get introduced? And if you don't know, that's okay.
Well, actually, that as a feature goes back quite a ways, but well, obviously, it wasn't until Digitrex came out with the newer board because the old SE8C only knew how to talk to it via turnouts. Here's the
Correct.
example of why aspects are better.
Yeah.
With the SE8C, you had to send two turnout commands to tell it what lamp display to set up. But say you wanted to do a flashing aspect.
Oh, yeah.
And well, so what was happening is Jamboree was like every second would send the one set for dark and then send the set for yellow and then the set for dark, the one for yellow. Meanwhile, an aspect could be flashing yellow.
Yes.
And so one command does all it takes and no more
Yeah.
traffic.
And you've just highlighted the reason that I'm changing because I actually eliminated all my flashing aspects because it was clogging my local net up. I have a fairly large layout and it was sending, if we were using, any restricting or flashing yellow for advanced approach or whatever we were using. And you're right, it just choked the local net up. And so what I want to do is to send an address and then an aspect code. And I know that works. I've done it manually with my throttle, but I guess if I don't really know which version of JMRI introduced that, but I'll tell you what, that's not your problem if you don't remember. Now you're one of the guys who knows more about JMRI than anybody I know, and you're very helpful on all the forums. You could just try 4.24, and if it doesn't have it, just keep upgrading until it does. If that would be your advice. Again, don't want to take too much of your time, but if you knew offhand, you might save me some trouble.
Yeah, I'd say generally at this point, stepping your way forward as far as you can just to be a lot closer in sync on things will help. There has been
Okay.
kind of little changes along the way as different bugs get fixed. But the best thing I say about the old style versus the new, Aspect says one command for a whole mast. Meanwhile, the old way was each head got its own set of commands. And then the higher level softwares in CATS or JMRI was saying, okay, yeah, I've got this mast, but it's made up of these signal heads. And, there's a lot more traffic for that.
Oh yeah, understood. Absolutely. You've expressed the reason for my wanting to do that as I have a fairly good size layout, but I'm doubling the size of it. So as I add the new hardware, I just wanted to I'm going to have a second look on that, but again, that's above the scope of this conversation. But in any case, I want to just not make the same mistakes I made before. I want to learn from that and streamline the command sending, and that is a big part of it.
Steve, I think okay, to kind of answer your question a little bit, is that the JMRI has supported aspects since NCE Lidits. So that was 5, 6 years ago. I don't know, quite a ways back. Um, what you need to be looking for is when did JMRI add support for Digitrax signal commands? Aspect commands, because the way you will use this is you will have to define your signals in JMRI. And so that means that the JMRI signal mask tables and
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
okay,
I see.
will have to support the Digitrax aspect command. And that really is the transition version that you're going to need. And I couldn't tell you, maybe the release notes that have been published on JMRI, they'll tell you what's changed and added.
That makes perfect sense. Now I understand what you're saying because I couldn't create the table in the first place when all you've got is SE8Cs. And then I assume that all I have to do um, with the signal, not the template where you tell it what the aspects look like, but the one where you put in the addresses, all you need is the address of the uh, mast or head, and then it sends the code for that aspect or indication. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, what I would do is in JMRI, create your signal masks and give them a username. Okay. Then in CATS, in Designer, on the page that you define the signal, um, it's got a username field at the bottom. That username would be the same one that you used in JMRI, and then you skip all the detail stuff in Designer for CATS.
Okay.
Does that make
That makes
sense?
sense. Yes, it does. I'm just gonna do, you don't know me, but I was just gonna say that I'm pretty lazy, and I just thought I could jump right to it. I should have known better. It does say, Ken, that you should take these different steps, and I guess I thought I'd just pull the band-aid off, go all the way, and then see what problems I had, and that was not very smart. So there you
Well,
have
no, it worked. I mean, you found out what problems you had.
it. All right. Well, listen, I want to thank you for that. So I'm going to stop nitpicking about stuff. I think I've learned everything I need to learn. In fact, I'll probably pull my question. I'm going to pull my question off the groups.io because it might just confuse people.
Well, you see that if it's not there, I understand what you're trying to say, and maybe I can put a concise explanation.
Uh, pretty much, I understood what you're saying, so I think I'm going to be on the right track. I'll let you know after I've gotten, if I have further trouble. But it's now the ball's in my court now, and it's such a resource to have you on a call like this, and you too, Ken. Again, I've seen so much of you've helped so many people, and I'm one of them on just the forum. So good to kind of meet you sort of in person. So
I've got a suggestion to you, though. You said pull your question. I'd say what would help people more often is instead you put up a conclusion
oh yeah,
of, okay, learned this, whatever. So this is what
that's
I'm going
brilliant.
off to do. Because that gives somebody else a trail that if they started with your original question, they'd then jump down to the bottom and it would tell them, okay, here's the route you took. So many times on so many of these questions you see out in the forums, that conclusion never gets posted.
I see. Okay. Why not? I'll do that. That sounds like if I can help a little bit, then why not, right? So, yes, I will do so.
Hi,
All
guys.
right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a similar situation, and I'm not sure if I'm in the same boat as Steve is here, but I got version 3 running, and I started doing signal masks in place of basically head control with turnout addressing. So I have one cantilever signal, which has 2 masts on it with, it's got 2 heads. And I'm having problems. I can get the aspects to show up in JMRI. I can change them on the layout that the aspects work fine. I've used the same username in CATS as was directed in the instructions, but I cannot get CATS to control those lights. They won't even come close to the same aspects. I get like one head will have a red and a green lit in it, and nothing matches the aspects that I have in JMRI.
Okay, Mark. Um, I think I know where the problem might be, and it goes back to um, in JMRI, you have to define a signal system, if I remember right. For each of your masts has to come from a signal system. Like for example, I think there's a basic and there's like a BN 1996 um, and so forth. Okay.
Okay.
And in that signal system, there's a bunch of other files. And the other files will say, um, for example, if you go chasing down into it, into the file structure of JMRI, it'll say if I want to clear, here's what is, and here's what the preceding signal has to be, and stuff like that. Okay, now the way CATS links into this is that is through the template name in CATS. And I'm looking at the CATS manual right now, and I see if I can direct you to the right section in the CATS manual. Um, and so, first of all, you got to get the right signal system name into CATS, and that's done in the template.
Okay.
And so that's one linkage. The next thing you got to do then is for each of those aspects, they have to be linked together the same. And again, I'm trying to find I'm looking through the designer manual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
14, section 14.8 called defining signals through JMRI.
Okay.
And in there, you probably don't have it open. But
Nope.
if you open up the designer manual and look at it, there's a diagram that shows you the signal. Well, okay, it shows you how the usernames are connected. In other words, the username in JMRI, where you put it into CATS.
Okay.
And then you go down a little bit farther and you make a note. It's called Figure 66. Shows
Okay.
you how to connect the signal heads.
Okay.
And from there, then it shows you the interconnection between when you're in JMRI, where you do an add and edit a signal mast, and where you put those same fields then into CATS.
Okay.
And my guess is if it's not, that's probably where the breakage and the linkage is, that you're not getting the right aspects.
Okay. Yeah, it's been frustrating trying to get this figured out because everything worked great when I used just the heads as like a turnout and like an accessory address, both thrown closed type of thing. It worked great. And now I guess I don't know if I can't get it to seem to work in version 3. It seems like it doesn't want to do that. I had to build masts. So I'm using the railroad circuit signalman boards for my signal drivers. And that's when I ran into this problem trying to build these masts. So
Hmm.
I will definitely I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing I'd ask is, have you experimented with trying to drive the masts directly in JMRI from the signal mast table? And does that display correctly on the physical mast?
It does. I have that. I built the masts in JMRI, and when you go in and I change the aspects, they do indicate correctly in the field. So it's just a connection between JMRI and CATS basically. When I go back to my CTC panel and try to throw the signal, I don't get any of the aspects even remotely correct.
Yep, I agree. It's a linkage. The other thing to look for is pull up the JMRI system console
Yep.
and see if you're getting any error messages there. Those sometimes, if you are and you're still having trouble, post those error messages on the group's IO, and I'll take a look and see if it gives us any more clues as to what's not working right.
Okay. Very good. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And Steve, just to let you know also, you I have not released it yet, but I'm getting really close because it's been testing. I have reworked that route stacking algorithm so that if two non-overlapping routes, um, it, it'll take a later one if it doesn't overlap with an earlier one, if that makes sense.
Oh, that does. I think that's cool.
And it seems like it's working pretty good right now. So I
Well, I
wanted
like it.
that had some problems in it, or it was complicated enough code. I wanted to make sure I shaked it out pretty good before I release it on the world.
Sure. And you've got so version 3.0, which is on your wiki site, is the latest version. There's no other one, right?
That is the latest released. I of course have some beta testers,
Right.
and
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 I'm not ready to do that. I can barely get my own to work. What
yeah,
about is that what John Parker's using, or is he using a little bit newer
he's
of a
that's what
one?
he's using. He's
Per-
he's one of my basic beta testers.
Hmm. That's a big railroad to test on, but mine's going to be equivalent to that size once I get this edition going. I'd
Yeah, I
say it was
know.
about
You
half.
keep
Yeah.
watching what you've been doing. It's good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
How many, Rodney, how many stack commands will be capable of in the particular case? Like, I mean, three, four? I'm just curious.
How many stack commands?
Yeah, say it's a large railroad like Lehigh and Keystone. Could they have like four of them in there?
How much memory you got?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it in terms of programming technology, it uses a linked list, so it's not like there's a fixed number of slots or anything.
Okay. All right. I was just curious on that.
Yeah. It, but from a practical viewpoint, I think after a dispatcher gets more than two or three, he's rapidly going to lose track of who's who and stuff like that. I think from a practical viewpoint, you don't want to stack more than three or four.
I would agree with that. It can get pretty confusing.
Yeah.
I've seen it on a prototype a lot though, where they use it, where they use it and try and fire and forget. And I think I've seen things get really screwed up with it though. Like
Yep.
I've come along on the main, and all of a sudden I get an approach on the main line, and this is a prototype I'm talking about. And a guy will come in, oh, the stack didn't take it. He says, oh, maybe you ought to call Black.
Yeah, the thing to do now, if you really do want to use stacking, a couple things of note. First of all, make sure you name all of your signals in cats, because that's how um, um, the the routes are defined in the stack. It'll say from this signal to that signal. Okay, that helps a little bit. And the second thing is if you're going to use stacking and the quick router NX, I think is what I call it, make sure make sure that your hardware is good, because if your detection is not rock solid, you're going to get things fire that you don't intended to, you'll get things your stack to pop and execute when you really didn't intend it, and that can screw things up. Then cats will start throwing turnouts under trains and stuff like that.
Right. Basically, like losing the shunt.
Yeah. So that's my only, and that's my trepidation in doing the stacking stuff. Like John's layout is solid enough. I have no qualms about stacking stuff there, but I've had some other layouts where um, the detection is can be a little on the shaky side.
Okay, all right. Because I assume I know you're in the Denver area. I assume Steve is too, then, right? Because he's talking about Parker's layout.
No, Steve's in Oklahoma City.
Steve, you're in Oklahoma City. He's got his mute on.
Yeah.
I'm
Maybe
so
he's got.
sorry. I'm in Tulsa actually, but it's the state of Oklahoma, and I'm in Central Time, and I've had several opportunities to run on John's layout, and we got another friend up there, Rich Gibson, who used to be here in Tulsa, and I helped him get some of his stuff set up. So uh, Colorado's not a horrible drive for me and some of my friends, and I've yeah, so I don't live in the Denver area. I wish I did because it's a beautiful area to live in and a lot of great railroads. But we got a pretty good share here in Tulsa too.
Oh, okay, okay. I was just wondering when you talked about it. I thought you and Rodney live close to each other. Obviously, you're not next to each other. Okay.
Not close, but I've spoken with Rodney a lot. I've been one of the, I don't know, I don't want to say earlier, but I've done an early adopter of cats and have been using it since about, I guess when it came out. So I'm gonna say around, well, I don't know when it came out, but I've been using it since about 2006 or 2007. Rodney can correct me if it wasn't out yet, but when I built the first iteration of my railroad, that's what I use, and I've helped some other folks including Sammy Carlisle, who has that ATSF Hereford sub, which is pretty well known, get set up with CAT. So I've set it up and I've helped people set it up. So, and I've spoken with Rodney, and he's, as you all know, he's very gracious and helpful and always has time for you. And some of it's just been email and some of it's been actually talking. So,
Yeah,
again, yeah,
it's a neat system. We're
it
using
really is.
LCC on my buddy's railroad as we're phasing it in, and it was working real good there.
I've
I
thought
mean,
about going to LCC. Uh, because it has more bandwidth and feels like it's maybe a little more prototypical than a LocoNet, at least in the ways that you can separate the vital logic and things like that. But it feels to me like there's not quite enough uh, plug and play ready hardware out there for it. So um, I was getting jammed up with all these LocoNet messages, and that was one of the reasons I was looking at LCC. But eliminating all these signal commands, they don't utilize turnout commands. They don't send nearly as many messages. Should be a solution. And another solution that I'm already employing is to have multiple LocoNets. So I have one for all the turnouts, a different one for all the signals, that kind of thing, which removes the traffic. The throttles are on their own, so you turn your throttle, you're not fighting messages on something else.
right. Well, like you were mentioning before in the conversation about a flag, flashing signal taking up like an advanced approach or restricting and G core having taking up the information and that. Of course, that doesn't happen with LCC because it's all done in the CDI, the
Yes,
signal.
I'd like to learn more about it. Are you mostly using Bronson's RR circuits gear? Because I
Yes,
think, yeah, okay.
myself. There's other fella on here, Rob Ball. We're working on my buddy's layout together. He does the programming, and I do the hardware.
And if a man were to try and switch to that, because I'm actually building the equivalent of a whole new railroad, what's the bus that connects it?
What connection?
The bus, like it's not Ethernet or Cat5 and it's not LocoNet. What wires how do you wire it? Like,
Oh,
is it
oh,
twisted
it's
pair?
regular cat. I think it's a regular Cat 5 cable that you just plug in. That's
Oh, so
all
it
it is.
is a Cat 5 cable. Awesome. That's
Yeah.
better because that's readily available.
LCC went with the Cat 5 RJ45 type wiring because it's so easy to get.
Yeah, that's
Let's
right.
face it, nowadays the right connectors for LocoNet are getting harder and harder to
Yes,
find.
they are.
Flat cable, same thing.
Okay, Ken. Thanks.
Yeah, the system works good, obviously, it's probably pretty pricey and a big layout to start up because I know we're working on a signal system for my buddy's layout and he's just a CFO. Well, Rob and I could call him up and say, hey, we need this and this, and it's $8,000. Okay, it'll be here tomorrow.
That must
So
be nice. I'm not quite in that position, but I can afford the hobby. But I also, if I can make what I have work, I don't see why I not to. And that's what's wonderful. One of the many things is wonderful about these calls because you guys are going to help me get it working. It sounds like, and if I can't, then move on to LCC.
yeah, I all I can say is that's exclusively what we're using, and it's real good. And Rodney's got a nice interface there, the way we got it set up. By the way, Rodney, when you come out with the next version, is that going to be? Do you figuring out incorporating our little problem with the exit signals coming out of the interlockings that we talked about there last call?
Yeah, I've got that fixed, and what's hanging up now is a software problem management on my end because there's another problem with turnouts that somebody in Wisconsin had reported on, and it gets right to the real heart of how CATS handles turnouts and feedbacks and stuff like that. Anyway, I started tearing stuff apart to work on that, and then you mentioned your problem, and I got fixed for it, but unfortunately the code base that handles the turnouts is all kind of torn up right now, and in other words, an unresolved problem is blocking getting yours out.
Oh, which is fine because we probably won't need it for a year at least because we're not going to run cats until with actual operation until the whole railroad is signaled, and it's a gigantic operation trying to get this signal.
Yeah.
Because we got all kinds of wild aspects and stuff like that. I mean, Rob, how many aspects do we have on the layout? I can't remember.
16.
16, okay. Yeah, 16 different aspects. So
Back to your question, Steve, about when did I start releasing stuff? I think the first time I started handing out CDs that had cats on it was, you're about right, about the 2006 National Convention. I think it was in Cincinnati or something like that. So if you've been using that long, you're
Oh,
an
and then
early
I must
adopter.
not have been using it quite that long because when I started using it, you did have a download ability. So maybe it was 2008.
Yeah, well, what amazed me is when you had one of your guys get in there and actually change it to put in the stacking stuff. You got into the source code.
Yeah, that now, yeah, my friend Bob McNabb, who'd worked as a dispatcher at the BNSF for quite a while, um, he broke into it and did that, and that was with version of 2.14. But and that's the one I'm running. But I'm willing to, now that you've implemented that, I'm willing to sacrifice. And I never really liked using, kind of a customized version because, it was neither fish nor fowl, and I couldn't take advantage of other updates, those kinds of things. So this is why it's a big step for me to move past that. But yes, he implemented stacking only, but he did it exact. If any of you have ever played the signal computing company's train dispatcher. I guess I call it a game, but the dispatcher really works a lot like the actual Digicon system, and that's how Bob uh, worked this, and he did it probably not the best, most elegant way, Rodney, of writing it. What he did was when you set up a stack, it will immediately try to execute that route. But if it can't, because something's conflicting or there's a route conflicting, then it doesn't do it. But it just keeps trying and keeps trying and keeps trying. And finally, when the situation resolves itself because the other train got into the siding, then it executes the route. So maybe a clumsy way, but it did work for me, and it was limited. But the prototype used to be two. Maybe it's not anymore, but it wasn't a true NX. You could only go from one signal to the closest adjacent signal. Now you could do NX routes on the Digicon, but it was not in the context of stacking. So if I had two trains making a meet and one's on the main and one's in the siding, of course you'd line the guy out of the siding onto the main and the other guy onto the main into the other main, and then when one of them cleared up, the stack would throw. I hope I'm describing it right, but it does work. And each stacked situation is completely independent, so I don't have to know which siding is going to be occupied first, which is one of the challenges I had with the way you implemented it. But again, you've got so many good features. The call on alone is a great addition, and a lot of other wonderful things. So I'm just gonna and Bob's gotten a little older and he's not as willing to break into Java code and all of that. But yeah, he also when he left BNSF, he became a professional Java programmer for some company called I think Tripwire or something like that, and he did that for about 10 years. So it was a perfect storm, and he lived in Oklahoma here, and he was my chief dispatcher because he used to work for the prototype. So he had all that, not only real dispatching knowledge, but also the desire for the board on the model to work like what he was accustomed to at work before BNSF went out and wrote their whole own system, which of course we all know they have now. But this is back when they were using some version of something you could buy.
That's interesting. But Rodney, he brought up call on, and I know we noticed on LCC it's faded out. It's not an option, and I thought I figured out the reason why. There's some kind of problem that you can't do it with LCC, right?
I gotta think about that. Um, maybe, but I think you can kind of rely on cats to do it. Okay, the biggest problem with call on is that, let's define what call on mean. It's basically a temporary override of the safety system. And right there is the definition of why it's hard to do, because you're suspending the safety system. Um, and and that may be why you can't do it in LCC. But if CATS or JMRI has the ability to force a flashing aspect of flashing red on LCC, then you could use JMRI or CATS or somebody to say, I want to do the override.
Okay, because I think mean, I know we just simply release a hold on when we were using cats with LCC, and it doesn't give you that option. Um, Not that that's important. We were just playing around with it because I'm assuming it's because of the way the traffic is set with the arrows on better description. The arrows, the green and red arrows on the cats itself, right? It's overriding that. It allows a head-on collision or whatever is what we're saying, right?
Yeah, pretty much so. It because if you just release the hold on LCC, then LCC is going to say, well, that's not safe. I can't, I can't do that. And that's kind of why we've delegated that kind of power to LCC, is that a lot of the safety aspects reside in the LCC, the vital logic. And a call on is saying, okay, I understand, but I override that safety condition.
Right. I guess it all depends on how you program the conditionals in LCC, whether you want to permit something like that. To be honest with you, that's the way it seems to me. You could program
That's
the LCC.
exactly the case. You have to put into the instruction stack and the conditionals that, okay, here's my condition where a dispatcher has set a call on. I'm going to ignore whether the block's occupied or not, and I'm going to give a restricting signal anyway.
Yeah, that sounds like that would work.
Right, but it can't. And it was faded out when we tested and when we tried it, Rodney. We were just experimenting, myself and Rob Ball. We were just, we didn't need it really or anything. It's not. We were wondering why it was like faded out, like not an option that
Okay.
we couldn't release the hold.
Okay, you mean in cats it was faded out.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. The cats is very specific about the conditions in which it will allow a call on. Specifically, um, you have to have a train in the approach block to the signal, so that has to be occupied. The second thing is that the control point has to be unoccupied. Okay, so in other words, so if you're within that triad of signals that protect the control point has to be unoccupied because the dispatcher wants to be able to, usually he wants to be able to throw the turnout and stuff like that. And then the next thing is that the following block has to be occupied. So you have to have a situation of occupied block, unoccupied
Okay.
control point, and then occupied block. And
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, I understand. Now, Rob, when we tested that, we didn't have it. I don't think we had them both occupied, did we?
No, we did not.
Okay. All right. So that probably answers it then, Rodney. Maybe there is a release for it. Will release the hold. I mean, we'll have to eventually test that just for the hell of it when we're doing it. So I think when we were trying to solve our problem there with the following signals, we attempted to use call on to see what would happen, just to see what would happen, and it wouldn't bring it up. It would just fade it out. But I don't think we had the condition where the either block, either side of the interlocking was occupied. The interlock it was just one side.
yeah, I know that may be too restrictive. I don't know. I kind of designed that myself because if you go looking for the literature and stuff, unless you actually dig around into the relay diagrams of systems, you kind of have a rough general idea of how call-on works, but not all the details.
No, right. I got it. It's funny now with the CSX on the prototype now. The signals now have a return to train option that used to be just specific to a few places specifically designed, like when I worked for Conrail as a train dispatcher. So it was only a few places you could have a return to train signal actually come in. And now, as long as the movement is completed through the interlocking, obviously there's all kinds of programming or whatever is involved with that. It's got to make a movement through the interlocking, and then you can make a signal back toward an occupied block that came against you. So they do have it on all the signals now at CSX because I see them use it all over the place if they're returning the train.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that may be historic, and this is just me talking off the top of my head and my theory, so I don't have any proof of this. But I think what happened is all that stuff required relays in the vital logic to work right, and relays were expensive. So said, well, when they first did all this stuff, they didn't put it in. If you got to have the relay in the vital logic to do it, and if it didn't have the relay, then you couldn't do it. Then as we went from all this relay-based stuff to computer-based stuff, they kept the vital logic. The evolution, if you look at the evolution of CTC, everything was done with this machine with the knobs and switches in the central office and all the vital logic, and they talked over code lines and stuff like that. Then people said, okay, let's get rid of this mechanical stuff sitting in the office and we'll put a computer terminal in there. Well, where's the expense? It's not that thing that's in the office, it's all the vital logic. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why you didn't see them.
Right.
And now when they've gotten completely computerized, that you reprogram it and you can call on in everybody.
Right. Right. Yeah. Even because even in the field, there's a lot of, you still get a lot of relays that are vital relays and that, but there's a lot of programming involved now, and they got it down pat where they could do it everywhere. I guess before it was just they only put the expense in where it was frequently used. Is all.
Yeah, it's the story of the farmer and his axe. He's replaced the handle 3 times and the head twice. Best axe he's ever had.
Yeah. Right. Steve Black, you're using LCC and cats, right? Have you got that up or part of it running or?
I have signals up and running, but uh, I've not opened up cats yet. My goal is to. I just haven't got around to it, but I do use fully signaled with LCC.
So you're currently your railroad just running like ABS?
Yes, yeah, without JMRI attached. Yeah,
Right. So you just program it through JMRI and that's it.
but no, it's programmed through the logic on the LCC nodes. And then I only use JMRI for panel for
Okay.
tablets and stuff.
I got you. Okay. All right. Yeah.
And that's worked really good because I don't have to turn a computer on. You know, I just go down. Everything runs off a backup battery supply, and so I just turn that on. The network or the LCC network comes up, and the NEC, the Power or Power Pro stuff fires up, and away I go.
Right. We're doing the same thing right now as the signals are going in. We're doing the exact same thing. Right? Just you turn on as soon as you turn on the master switch for the layout, all the signals come in under ABS right away.
Yep. Well, I've extended a little bit more than that. I have one node that I act as a power up, and it immediately turns all the signals to off, to dark. That's one of the first things it does. And then after so many seconds, it turns them all to red. And then after so many seconds, they're free to do what they should be doing. And the reason for that, because my tortoises turnouts, I didn't want them chattering when I first turned power on. You know how they'll cycle back and forth. And
Right.
So I've got several different delays built from this one, which this one node does. It just looks at the power up on the node and says, is the power good now? And if so, it starts a timer, and then a bunch of other stuff comes off that timer. So anyway, the turnouts are all in place where they should be, the default settings, and then the signals go live to what they should be.
I got you. Okay, so you hold it back while okay, I understand.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few timers because I want the signals to all go dark immediately. I want LCC to stop doing its initialization. You know how it does its queries and stuff. If you look at the monitor, and once all that's settled down, then I'll turn power to the tortoises on so they can find their main positions. And then the signals all go red, like you see, like a hold. They're all on hold, and then another couple seconds later, when everything's settled down, the very last thing it does is takes the hold off the signals, and they go to what they should be.
Interesting. Okay. Should program that all in there. Okay.
Yeah, just using one node and some IO ports. But
Okay.
because see this one node, what it does, I use the NMRA member number as event.
Okay.
For the event is okay, all signals dark. And it sends out just one event. And then all my signal boards, the LCC signal boards, look for the unique event. And when it sees it, then it tells all the signals to go dark on that board. So I don't have one node turning on, trying to send out like 16 to 20 events. I just have the node send out one event, which is my NMRA number. And then the signal boards just look for that event. They say, okay, this is mastered dark, and so that none of the signals light up. And then I have the same for CFTC, and also the same for when to fire the turnouts before the power comes on. It sends out one event, then the different tower boards look for that event and says, okay, I recognize that my NMRA master or event number, and then they'll set whatever route for those turnouts. So here again, this one node that controls everything is just sending out one event, but then the tower nodes and the signal nodes look for those events and they do what they got to, which made it a lot easier because ladders, yard ladders,
Yes.
stuff like that. It just made it easier to send out one event that says, okay, I want to line up all the turnouts for the main. And so the yard ladders, you start firing off, and your sidings and all the other stuff. But those tower boards are only listening for one event.
I got you. Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
But it really simplified a lot of things because I was running out of events on my power on node. Then I got thinking about, well, hell, all I got to do is send out one event, define it as a universal to my layout, and then the tower node or signal node will take it and using the logic, then it does what it has to do.
Right. Okay. It's interesting how different solutions there is with LCC that you could think up wild crap like that.
Yeah, well, some of it was out of necessity because you run out of events that an output can do. So when I got thinking about it, just made sense. Just and then I've got a timing sequence on my spreadsheet. So if I add more nodes, then I can just increase one value in IO port, the timer value, so that I'll just sit there and watch, make sure all the LCC messages are done, and then I know I can power on the tortoises, change the signals, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Rodney, it's like when we turn the CTC on and off, look at all the things that it does.
Yeah.
Turning the panels on and off and changing all the signal aspects and whatnot. I mean, we've looked at the event table when we've done that. It's quite crazy how many events go out or how many times that event ID is used, I guess is a better way of phrasing it.
Right. But it's got me just thinking, Rob, whether we could use something like that. We might or not, maybe not, but I'm just trying to run through all the stuff in my head,
Mm-hmm. Like what you said, it's interesting how each of us come up with different ways for solutions using the hardware.
Well, yeah, look at that automatic interlocking Ken's got over there that he takes to Springfield.
Absolutely.
Guys, I think I'm going to take off. It's been really good listening to everybody. The Slackers are going to be playing football here in a few minutes, so I think I'm going to go watch that.
Hey, Steve, where are you located again? I remember you said it before.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Oh, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Fortunately, the winter's been pretty good so far here.
Well, we're just outside of Buffalo, New York here, and west of Buffalo towards Cleveland. There's been a massive amount of lake effect snow here in this last since Thanksgiving. I mean, it was wild.
Yeah, Rodney and I have a sister that lives in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I think she has 5.5 feet around her house right now.
Oh, really? You
Yeah,
said Rodney and you? Are you related?
yeah, we're brothers.
Oh, huh. I just thought it was just a fluky thing that you had the same last name. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, where we grew up, across the small field was Rock Island Railroad, which they shared with the Burlington.
That's interesting. And you guys all spread out. How'd your sister end up in Erie?
Basically, her husband answered an ad in the Des Moines Register newspaper. Farm group in Erie was looking for Midwestern values to manage the farm, and they flew him out and they hired him. So,
oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting.
yeah, that company in Erie, they made potato chips and they had rental property and all the other stuff, and he could do all that. So they flew him out, interviewed him, hired him, and then she moved out there many, many decades ago.
Oh, wow. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, all right. You got a first-hand guy to talk to when you put cats I assume you're going to put cats in on your stuff, right?
I have all the intentions of doing it, and I just got to get around to getting it done.
I can tell you, it works real good.
Yep. My layout's pretty small. It's not that I really need cats, but I do like to work with that kind of stuff. And in fact, I went through and did the expense and the time on doing the signaling for LCC. So the next step is to add cats. But here again, a lot of times I run it, I don't have the computer on. So
Right. We do the same thing, right?
yeah. Yeah.
No.
Rodney,
Okay.
Kate, remind me, where are you?
Me, Ken?
Yeah.
No, I'm in Clarence, New York. So I think you had connections to Kenmore, right?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. My sister lives Tonawanda, right next to the Brighton Golf Course. My brother lives on Paradise, just opposite the Transit Valley Country Club.
Well, really, Transit Valley Country Club. I'm pretty close to there. Rob Ball is right there in Tonawanda.
Yeah, I live in the city of Tonawanda, Ken.
Okay.
Mm.
No, it's
But
actually, I
I
remember go back a long time. There was somebody who was living just off Ellicott Creek.
You said you were living that way?
No, I remember talking with somebody who lived there, which was at the time just down around the corner from my sister and my mother.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I know you're in Syracuse area, right? Not quite. You don't actually live in Syracuse.
Yeah, actually, I'm on the east side of Syracuse.
Okay, yeah, because I think we talked before, like Manoa and all that area, because I know DeWitt, obviously.
Yeah, my usual line is if you go to 278, no, 277.5 on the old New York Central, turn directly south and about 500 yards, you're at my house.
Oh, okay, too. All right, yeah. All the people I work with that work lines east as engineers, they all go through there obviously all the time, you know. So, but
Yeah,
you get
quiet, nice, pleasant background noise. Actually, one time when they dropped a rolling bomb over in Oneida and they shut the line down for like 7 days, it was just so weird that there's like no noise out here. And you go across the grade crossing and wait a minute, rust is forming.
I remember that incident with Oneida. If you ever look up in the NTSB reports, it's an interesting report on that train wreck. So if you ever want to read something interesting, look that one up. And you're getting ready for Springfield, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. The one thing I haven't done with that module set yet is figure out how to correctly uh, detect the train's direction across the diamond and cut out after it. Because I think I've got to add one or two sensors so I can distinctly tell uh, which case on the transit direction and when, okay, now we can release the lock on the diamond so the other way can go.
I see what you're saying. So now the way you got it set up now, he's got to clear the approach circuit as before he can get a signal, right?
Yeah, and now we're working with MSS in all four directions. So some of that gets into, okay, if we've got an MSS module next to it, on the one hand, that lets them get the signal sooner, but on the other hand, that also means it's later for them to release it going the other way.
Got it's I always get a kick out of looking at that at Springfield. We're amused by it.
Well, the setup we had at the Syracuse train show, we had, I think, around 10 or 12 MSS equipped modules together. And that was really cool because we had the junction right in the middle of that block of modules.
Oh, that's pretty neat. That's neat.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying, gee, maybe I want to get into that.
Yeah. And so because I know the involvement with programming stuff with LCC, and I like the way it works, but it still takes quite a bit of thinking sometimes exactly what you got to do.
Yeah, and then a lot of times it gets down to if you're going to make this decision, you have to have these inputs to be able to make that decision. And right now, I've been having trouble with a couple optic detectors that if I had them working, I'd have a better feel for it.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. It was great talking. Yes, I'm gonna bow out here. So
I think I will too. Steve Davis here. Do want to thank all of you, and especially Rodney K and Rodney Black and Ken Cameron for your extremely good help. And Ken, I took your advice and posted a response. Feel free to comment on it further if I didn't characterize it quite uh, accurately enough. But I do believe that I've now updated, uh, you know, to talk about our conversation today.
okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Have a great night, guys. Take care.
All
We'll
right.
see you.
Yep.
Take care.
Two.
Bye.